Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our 11th International Craft Conference, which, as the number shows, it's the 11th occasion that we've organized this event, 11th year in a row, and this time around we also have another conference series called European Blue Sky Conference, which we started organizing in 2013, and it's been the two conference series we have been organizing separately, and this time around we have decided to combine the two since the thematics and the agenda of the two conferences started to become more and more aligned with each other. And so this is the first time that we are kind of organizing the two conferences together, and so as the conference program shows, we are in for a very substantive and very program-filled 3 days, and we would like to warmly welcome you, and we hope that you will enjoy all the 3 days. Let me also give the word to András, to my fellow conferencier today, my fellow host, just to say a few words as well.
Thank you and welcome, and it's a wonderful opportunity to see you all here, and it's also wonderful that the two series of conferences were merging, so the synergy of these two events and the synergy of the very important thinking somehow became not only parallel but somehow could meet. And also the topics we are discussing in this upcoming 3 days are creativity, responsibility and cooperation, which are crucial, and also the other key terms that we shall focus on with the wonderful expert scholars and professors who are here are the cities and universities for the new world, because there are some great expectations to continue in a very different way, a kind of new university concept here in Kőszeg.
Yes, and now I would like to welcome our Director General, Professor Miszlivetz Ferenc, and I would like to ask him to welcome you.
Thank you, Béla and András. I feel as a guest here. Yes, so new faces, a new future, which we are trying to. It's just a little color locale. I've been working on this completely hopelessly for about 35, 40 years to balance out a room. But that's just an interesting game. Yes, I think everything was said that I wanted to say by Béla and András. It's a very interesting juncture we are at for the time being. We are coping with keeping a new institute functioning, working, running. It's called iASK. It's not even 10 years old. Institute of Advanced Studies, Kőszeg, with the famous game with the letters, iASK. That is something permanent. I ask and you answer. So this is a workshop rather than a big conference. We did not invite students. We didn't. It's a workshop to figure the future based upon the present. So the juncture is that we are running this new, relatively new institute. Meanwhile, we are planning to establish another institute which is going to be independent because it belongs to the United Nations University Network. 13 institutes exist worldwide, but ironically, paradoxically, most of them in the richest part of the world, and the problems are outside. Most of the problems, not all of the problems, most of the problems, the roots of the problems are in the rest of the world, because the headquarters is in Tokyo, one of the biggest institutes is in New York, and 6 institutes already exist in Western Europe. And that's a new, how to say it, intellectual challenge, because iASK defined itself as an international institute located in Hungary, trying to become an international institute with a lot of difficulties, facing the COVID, facing the war, facing ideological problems, self-isolation of Hungary, and many other things. But I think we managed, more or less, in the last 10 years. But now the new institute, which it seems to me will be established soon, it's a truly global international institute or chain of institutes. That means that the members, the director, are not supposed to be, or could be, but not necessarily will be Hungarians. And what we do now, and we started already at the beginning of this year, to think about the possible fruitful interrelationship or cooperation, possible cooperation between two entities. So iASK does not want to change its profile. It has a lot of interesting research projects and centers, and some of them have very strong roots here in local, regional realities. Some others are more theoretically oriented. But certainly it has to be a matching partner, because there is nothing else here. So the interesting suggestion we made towards the Hungarian government, for the Hungarian government and the United Nations University Rectorate, that it should be established in Kőszeg. It's not just an accident. It should be established, if it is coming to Hungary, it should be established here, because what we have done with this bold experimentation, building a new institute of advanced studies here, is that we took the advantage what is offered by Kőszeg. And now I will give the word for Béla, because it's a fantastic thing this city is offering for those who want to contemplate, who want to remain creative, and not becoming a little spare part in the big machinery of a university and producing more students, more credits, more diplomas, but want to keep their capability to think and for self-reflection. And that was mostly due to the fact that it was not only Jody Jensen and myself who felt, and before that Elemér Hankis, our mentor, and some other friends who are unfortunately not with us anymore, but some other people from other parts of the world who felt the same, that we need a kind of third place, which is within and outside of a small, relatively insignificant country, with a huge capacity, huge intellectual, underutilized capacity. So the experimentation was about that. It's try to keep people at home, try to create an academic and human environment where you can work and you can start your career as a young scholar. The working language is English. Okay, and sometimes we are falling back to our Hungarian realities, but its working language is English. And if we could not find Kőszeg, I don't think we could have managed that. We tried in Budapest, we tried in Szombathely, and I'm very, very grateful to our friends and colleagues who reinforced this feeling that it was the right decision. Now, it was not so difficult to convince the UNU leadership and their experts that it was a good idea. But now we have to prove it. So I will give the word to Béla Básthy, an old friend and colleague, and he's the mayor of city. Some people are new here, so not everyone knows that. Béla.
Thank you very much. I just tried to find the word Dornröschen in English. What is Dornröschen in English? Sleeping Beauty. So the Sleeping Beauty, Kőszeg, the Sleeping Beauty, was waiting for so long time for this moment and for this autumn this year. Let's play a little bit. Ferry already mentioned that the working language is English, but we have always in the background our native languages, and I think they are very important. So let German, Croatian, Hebrew, or even Hungarian. So my one is Hungarian, and let me play a little bit with the Hungarian name of this town. The town is called Kőszeg, you know, and maybe not Hungarian-speaking people don't know that that this word Kőszeg contains a very short word, ősz, autumn, is in Kőszeg, because autumn is the most beautiful time to Kőszeg, also for the nature and for fruits and products. But in this year, I think we have to give a little bit more focus on this ősz or autumn, because it's really a harvest time. Another joke, the 11th of the conferences, it's time to go with the 11 player. It's time to play in the Champions League. so welcome in the Champions League of Craft. And back to autumn. So we have really a very nice harvest. We worked very hard last year. We did a lot, I think. And we have some fruits in the fruit basket. and we are very happy about it, really. So you, of course, know, because Ferenc mentioned it, we have the first decisions for UNU in Kőszeg. We have another decision of the Hungarian government to support the finance, to give an ongoing finance for the building of a new center for the construction. Yes, you know, this bigger institute. And we also have a third decision, which is to support the town's jubilee. We will celebrate 500 years of the Osmanic siege of Kőszeg in 2032, and before also 700 years of royal town Kőszeg. So I think it's a nice basket, and as it's usual in Hungary, because you know, we are the strong men created by hard times. All results, all these fruits mean much more work in the future. So thank you for this conference, that we can take a breath, we can a little bit enjoy and share our results. I think we will hear very interesting reports from different fields. I, in my person, will be there as many as I can, but here we have also some tasks in the town. But really, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your research, your ideas, and I wish you only that we can be close together as we used in the last years, and we can really manage our goals. Thank you for this cooperation, and I wish big success to the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the opening words and for welcome messages, and it's really the time of harvesting, so let's see what we have. And now I invite Mr. Tamás Novák to give his presentation. Tamás is a diplomat, a scholar, a project leader, and he was for several years a science and technology diplomat in the United States, and now he's the head of the international relations of iASK, so I think the best way to kick off the meeting. Thank you, Tamás. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Is it working? Yeah, okay. I'm very happy to be here in front of you, and I would like to add a different perspective on Kőszeg. I'm very new here, but I think that the best way to discover the city is just walking through in every street, and I did that because yesterday I ran 16 kilometers all through the streets of Kőszeg, so now I have a map in my head because I'm preparing myself for the marathon running. But anyway, so that was a real experience yesterday evening, so I love this. And now let's turning to my presentation. The main title of that is From Local Roots to Global Reach. And I highlighted the local roots because that is the starting point and probably one of the most important points for this whole project in Kőszeg, that we have to base all our activities on these local roots. And local roots means, of course, Kőszeg, but maybe in a broader circle, broader regional circle, where the center is Kőszeg, obviously. So the next question is, and I always try to design my thinking along these three questions, which is very simple: why, what, and how. And if you can answer all of these questions, then you maybe can implement something. And the why is very clear. Why now? Why we are here? And why we are talking about these chain of institutions? Maybe Ferenc mentioned this word. That iASK is, of course, is a fantastic institution. And now another institution is coming to Kőszeg, which is UNU Institute. And there is also the Synergy Campus. So we have these very challenging tasks to create something new. The demand and the challenge is huge because, as Ferenc mentioned, there is only a very few number of UN institutions in the world. So we have to prove something. Researchers, Kőszeg, and the larger region as well. So it's very challenging. So that's the why, of course. The next question is what? And what? The answer seems to be very simple. We want to be prepared for the future, for the next 2 years. So it's very easy to answer to that. But the most difficult question is how. And that's the thing that we have to think in the future, in the coming weeks and coming years. I wouldn't say about coming years because we do not have so much time. So we have to decide how can we implement all these projects in a way that the impact will be felt all around the globe, also in Hungary, and obviously in Kőszeg. So that's our task. The first question, or not question, but what are the ideas and the principles which should direct our thinking for the future to achieve these goals that I mentioned to you? And I have tried to put together a list of these principles. Not all of them are new, of course, because this institution, iASK, has followed many of these. So the first is obviously this interconnectedness, where different scientific fields are working together. You know, there is sometimes somebody says that science is not social sciences are not sciences, only the hard sciences are sciences. So we have to somehow bridge over this presumption and saying that these two very different fields are not so very different and they have to work together. So that's the basic principle for the current institute and also for the future institute. The second is related to the applicability and social relevance. Whatever we do, whatever the research is trying to prove, I think that it has to serve the society. It has to have a positive impact on the society. Sometimes it's very difficult to identify these positive impacts because these are basic research. Maybe the research leads somewhere, maybe the research doesn't lead anywhere, but somehow we have to find the practical relevance of that and the applicability for the good of the people. The next is, and that's probably one of the points which is the most attractive thing in Kőszeg and iASK, is the harmony of science and arts. When I was a diplomat in New York City and I organized events, I always tried to connect science with arts, which meant simply that there were scientific presentations, and in the background there were some arts, either Hungarian folk dance or a Hungarian singer or something like that. So it's fantastic, and the culture and arts can always reinforce the impact of scientific achievements. There is a very excellent book by the wife of András Szemerédi, who was an Abel Prize winner mathematician in Hungary, and his wife just collected the artwork of mathematicians, and it's so rich. All of the mathematicians had something to do with some of the channels of the arts, either painters or musicians or something like that. So that's very important. The next principle is the communication. We have to be very creative because the world has changed. So old communication formats may not be very successful in recent years. TikTok and many other, new instruments and channels changing completely the world. And the youngsters does not bother much with publications or long stories. So we have to be very creative without losing the major message of the scientific world. And then partnership and collaborations at every level. I will talk a little bit more about this every level. What does this mean? And of course, engagement with the local community. I do not want to stress the importance of that. And that's why it's important that you are here. And you have always been here. That's very important background. Okay, and now comes the next point. This situation here where I would put this in the following phrase that iASK is special and Kőszeg is special. And the city is wonderful, the institute is great, and we have this iASK, Kőszeg, UNU Institute, and the Synergy Campus. And of course, my dyslexia kicked in, so it's Synergy Campus International, but anyway. So what can we do? What can we do in order to achieve these goals? So some concrete points. So the first is we have these multidisciplinary foundations. So we have to use that because it's quite unique. Many institutions try to connect these two fields and this multidisciplinary thinking. And I remember that we talked with Charles in New York City a couple of years ago when we first met, that you wanted to collect different scientists from different fields, social scientists and natural scientists, and to raise a problem and just hear their opinion from very different scientific fields. We have never achieved this objective, but now we try to do that here. The second is related to visibility, global visibility and networks. That's, for me, is the most important. The networks, the building networks with everybody. You never know what's happened in the future. So it's just a coffee with someone, just visiting a conference and having a dinner with someone, just meeting on the soccer field. My son, one of my sons in New York played soccer, and on the side of the soccer field, I just started to talk with another parent. And it turned out that he is the president of a foundation which supports the most and the best economic school in Central Europe, which is located in Prague. And this led to a very fruitful collaboration, which I'm trying to bring into this institution. So that you never know. And the end goal is, of course, just positioning the iASK into something which is a global reference point for knowledge communities at the intersection of disciplines. So maybe these are the what to do. And the next point here leads us to the next point. It's still what to do, but now it's related to the UNU institution and the Synergy Campus, that the UNU Institute is a very important branding instrument for us, for Kőszeg. We have to utilize that. Of course, it raises some risks because based on this very strong brand, maybe many stakeholders would like to be somehow involved into this project who don't have to. So we have to be very careful regarding this, but we have to be open. We have to listen everybody, but be careful. The next is related to the collaborative ecosystem. So which means that we have to unite science, education, arts, and maybe many other things in the Synergy Campus. So it's the next step. So iASK, of course, is a very important starting point. Kőszeg is very important. UNU Institute is very important. But still there is the Synergy Campus. And we have to fill this with content, which is not so easy, I think. And then comes the how. So what should we do now? And these are the so-called immediate actions, but these immediate actions are a process for everybody. So it doesn't happen overnight, But anyway, we have to start these steps immediately. And we already started, of course, but we have to put much more energy and emphasis on that. The first is the strengthening the international and national visibility. So let's go to conferences. Let's publish. Let's go to the media. Let's show to the outside world our strengths and multidisciplinary strengths in order to attract attention and attract recognition. So this strategy, the increasing and strengthening international national visibility, will raise the profile of Kőszeg and the institute. So not just international visibility, but national visibility as well. The second, expand the network of every kind of network across the innovation ecosystem. And when I intentionally use the word innovation ecosystem, not research ecosystem, because innovation in my terms includes everybody, everything. It relates to cities, research, education, culture, many things. So it's a very big circle. And the result would be the creation of a pool of potential collaborators. So whenever someone will think about it, okay, I have this good idea, with whom can I do that? With whom can I implement that? And then maybe he or she will think about iASK, Kőszeg, Synergy Campus. You can choose the word. And the third immediate action is to develop new products. And I would use this as a policy-relevant analysis and research outputs. That's very important because we are a research institution. We have a lot of research outputs, and Zsolt knows very well. And he has great ideas how to put these research results into motion and to attract the attention of the international research world. So that's where these three points that I have identified as a concrete steps, and now I did something, I don't know what. So more concretely, the first is strengthening international and national visibility. These are very practical things, not so difficult, but very important. The first is that transform and expand communication tools to reach broader audiences. That's what I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago. TikTok, Facebook, you know, when I'm telling Facebook, we are talking about Hungary. Nobody uses Facebook in the United States. So maybe we have to repurpose our channels if we want to reach American audience instead of Facebook through something else. There are many forms and experts in our institution as well knows how to use these channels, but we have to use that. The next is repurpose the output. Conferences, videos, blogs, infographics, we can use many things. I know that it seems to be very far from research, but in order to translate research results into consumable product, then you have to do something, maybe this one. And then comes the segmentation of the audience. There are universities, research institutions, the people on the street. We have to tell them what we are doing. And that's why we have to segment our audiences and target the promotion. It's very difficult, I think. And it relates to, of course, the development of new outreach strategy as well. Okay, the next point to which I mentioned to you as a concrete step, but now even more concretely, build network across the innovation ecosystem. The first relates to our region. We are in Kőszeg, obviously. Austria, Slovakia, Slovenia, Croatia, many countries are so close. Yesterday I almost ran into Austria, so it's not very easy to cross the border anymore, fortunately. But we are here in Central and Eastern Europe, and this UNU Institute will be the first in the former socialist countries. We have to capitalize on that. So that's why we have to put an emphasis on our larger region, the Central Europe and the Balkans, the Southeast Europe, Central Europe. So we have to deal with that very strongly. The next relates to new partnerships, network of small platforms, create innovative circles of networks. what am I talking now? For example, let's try to involve young people into the work of the institute. Go to the high schools and involve in them. I know that there were some connections and contacts with high schools in this region and in the city, but it did not achieve the expected results. So we have to upgrade this. And there can be many small circles. The very important thing is that more and more people, young people, talented people, will be interested in coming to Kőszeg and to contribute to the success of this whole project. And there are many others. I won't waste the time. Collaborate with influencers. That's my next point. That let's talk to Pamkutya. Let's talk to similar guys. You know, they reach several hundreds of thousands of people. I cannot imagine a better way to somehow channel our message. Yes, and the high schools are already mentioned to that. Okay, and the third one, developing policy-relevant analysis and research outputs. It's not easy, and many different products can be included into this blogs, short analysis, 2-page long research output, newspaper articles, many other things. But we have to focus on that in order to spread the word and create new products that can be then distributed to also in Hungary and in other countries as well. And visualization, these are important things, but very concrete. I just wanted to use some examples. How can we translate into practical steps the most important tasks which are ahead of us? And now I've tried to put a diagram where I was trying to somehow visualize all things that I have mentioned. So we have iASK. iASK is a research institute, of course, a multidisciplinary research institute, and a platform for collaboration. We have to be the center of all kinds of collaborations here in Kőszeg in relation to UNU Institute, Synergy Campus, and so on and so on. And we have the domestic ecosystem and the international ecosystem, which would include all levels, universities, research institutions, cultural organizations, high schools, many others. And then comes the international Synergy Campus. I just put here some of the ideas that we have already started to elaborate. UNU Institute, AI Institute, Balkans, which already has, of course, in the iASK, but it can be strengthened, makerspace, and other functions and areas. Of course, the ideas are countless, but we have to pick those 5, and we have to focus on those 5. But maybe this visualization can be used, as you know, as a path. So, okay, we have how, what, but what is the next steps? What I'm doing, for example, here, and hopefully many others here. The next is finalize the ideas, pick these 5, consolidate these concepts, and align with the principles that we have. Engage key stakeholders, involve partners, policymakers, students, and advisors. Talk to everyone. Talk to everyone. Go to conferences. Try to create your own network and the institute and grow the institute's network. Conduct feasibility studies. So we have to analyze how can we implement and achieve our goals. So, and it requires feasibility studies, financial, operational, and impact viability. Then plan, timeline. We have to define the timeline. We have, let's say, 2 years until the International Synergy Campus hopefully will open. So we do not have more time. When the Synergy Campus is open, will be opened, we have to be prepared. These new initiatives have to put into the Synergy Campus immediately. So that's why we have to be quite fast and rapid. So pilot initiatives. So let's test small-scale projects to see whether it works. I can tell you some of the ideas that I already started, very small scales. And then formalize the partnership. It comes at the end of the day. If we already prove that, yes, we have good ideas, we can implement them, and then we can make partnerships. And this is the subtitle of my presentation. where is the word collaboration is highlighted, because I believe in that. I know that in Hungary, most institutions do not collaborate with each other, which I hate, and this is the, the worst thing that can happen in the Hungarian research society and the higher education. We have to change that. We have to cooperate. I want to cooperate. So that's my last word. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tamás. In the spirit of collaboration, it was in the fall of 2017 when we sat in the minibus and we took a trip to Maribor. And that was the first time that we visited Alma Mater Europaea. And since then, we've had a formalized cooperation, which we just renewed. And now we have collaborative projects that we planned. And but I would like to ask Luka Tomažič to talk to us about how Alma Mater has managed to create its own success story. Luka is an associate professor of law at Alma Mater University, Europaea University, and also he is the vice dean for research. And he's also a full member and vice chair of the Slovenian Academy of Legal Sciences. So Luka, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, it's really good to be here, to be back in Kőszeg. It's my fourth time, I think. Thank you very much, Professor Miszlivetz, for the invitation and also for the initiative. Can you hear me? We talked about, talking about our university as a success story, because in university terms, time is often measured in centuries, not really in decades or years and so on. And we saw great complementarity between what iASK is doing and between what Alma Mater is doing. So my plan today is not to really present my university, but to talk about it in broader terms. So to start out with values, guiding principles. I think it is very much compatible what my dear colleague before said. And to start out from the values, why the values that we follow are important, why we believe they are important, and then to move towards a short presentation of the university, of the history, of what we are doing, what we can do together, and then to also show how these three values that, let's say, we identified, that we live, come together in practice and to give a perspective in the future. So I tried to use a bit of AI since it's a high time, it's kind of fashionable to generate some backgrounds, some paintings. So hopefully this will be make it a bit more entertaining also visually. So the three guiding principles that I want to talk about are knowledge, cooperation, and peace. Perhaps peace will seem a bit at first sight like an odd one out, but at the same time, I think when we start talking about it, it will prove very, very relevant and also very relevant to what iASK is doing through the United Nations network and other initiatives. So to start with knowledge. Knowledge, it is one of the few values that you can sort of almost prove. Why? Because even if you say that knowledge is not important, you are actually making a knowledge claim and you are being self-contradictory. So knowledge indeed has some intrinsic value. And when we are speaking about knowledge, we shouldn't remain limited to what Aristotle would term episteme, so what we later with the experimental method and so on brought into science, hard sciences, but also to remember the other part, phronesis, practical wisdom. Knowledge connected to the needs of society, to the needs of regional development, and so on. So this is seen in modern times through different things as AI, ethics, public good, and so on. So knowledge as a value is a bulwark against ignorance. Cooperation. I was really, really thrilled when I heard a colleague speak, and again, I'm echoing him, although we did not coordinate, and I was not aware of the content of his presentation. Often academia in Slovenia is similar, as I hear, to Hungary, is seen as a zero-sum game. So this is my garden, and don't come into my garden if you're from another institution. At Alma Mater, we have a different vision. Actually, academia is a positive-sum game, even when we are going to, let's say, competitive things like research projects, like Horizon that we just applied for together with iASK. There is cooperation. And if universities, research institutes, regional authorities, companies, individuals, high school pupils, and so on, cooperate, it is all the better for society. And we should also not forget bridging disciplines and bridging nations, which is again something that is very prominent at iASK, the need for interdisciplinarity and the need for inclusivity and diversity in research, as well as equal and equitable regional development. As we will see, similarly to iASK, Alma Mater Europaea University was also located in the smallest country in this part of Europe and in the second smallest city in this country. And this was intentional, this was not accidental. Then the third value, peace. You know, if we go back to negative and positive peace, peace is not merely absence of conflict, but really the conditions for human flourishing, not only between countries, but also within societies. And this is where both academia and culture have a role of an utmost importance. Joseph Raz, a legal philosopher, uses two analogies. If you have a man that is in a pit and gets food thrown in there every day, but he cannot really go outside, he does not have autonomy, and thus this is not something that would be in terms of positive peace. And he gives the second example of a woman on an island full of wild beasts, that although the beasts cannot catch her, she always needs to fear for her life. None of these two values are really peace in the sense that we want to foster at Alma Mater Europaea. And universities can be agents of peace within societies and between societies. So these three values, each strengthens the other. All three together are important and essential for global challenges. So let's go now with this in mind. Let's go to the history of Alma Mater. It started as an initiative of the European Academy of Sciences and Arts, which is a learned society encompassing, that joins together several thousand senior scholars, including, I never know how many exactly because it changes a bit, but I think 37 Nobel laureates. It is based in Salzburg, Austria, and the idea was to create a really European university and to create it in Central and East Europe. So when the people were from different countries around Europe were talking about where to locate it, they said it should be in the smallest country in this small part of the world, and it shouldn't be in the capital. It should be in the second largest city. So this is Maribor in Slovenia. And the mission was to do what public universities, let's say metropolitan traditional universities, don't do. In terms of education, to focus on one hand on what is deficitary, so where there's not enough people in the workforce with that education, or in the fields that are not represented at all. So we have physiotherapy, we have nursing, which is very much needed at the moment, but we also have applied artificial intelligence, we have the only ballet academy in Slovenia, and also other fields we go where it is needed, and that is the mission that that European Academy of Sciences and Arts gave us. This model has proven very successful, as we managed to go from basically a small cohort of 20, 30 students 25 years ago to now being the largest private university in Slovenia, with campuses in 5 Slovenian cities, plus a Vienna campus was opened in 2024. And also we became a full university under Slovenian law last year with all academic fields. On the way there, we integrated Institutum Studiorum Humanitatis, which is a humanities institute which was started with some people in Ljubljana, this circle that also included Slavoj Žižek and some others. So this was then incorporated into Alma Mater Europaea, and a dance academy was added in 2015. So this partnership with European Academy of Sciences and Arts, actually this academic patronage, allows us to punch above our weight in terms of cooperation. So we have cooperation agreements with Charles University, KU Leuven, Bologna, La Sapienza, and more recently also with the World Academy of Art and Science, with which we will be establishing a joint center in Maribor very shortly, which again shows how very much alike are the things that we are doing. So how do we live these values? The value of knowledge. We combine practical and theoretical learning, and this enables in the end that our graduates are the most employable in Slovenia. In AI, we don't do the hard research, where we can't compete with institutions such as, let's say, Jožef Stefan Institute, which was basically created in Yugoslavia to create the atomic bomb, but we do applied AI. So we let's say, do research where solutions from artificial intelligence are being applied to practical contexts that benefit the society, that benefit regions, that benefit people. Cooperation. We are interested in deep partnerships that go beyond just the signed memoranda. And we have a big forum annually. It's called It's About People Conference that has grown to be the biggest of its kind in Slovenia, perhaps more broadly. It has around 250 speakers every year. Professor Miszlivetz was also one of the key speakers last year, and in previous years it hosted people like Jeffrey Sachs from Columbia University. We brought the vice president of the European Commission for the first time in Slovenia, Oxford Lodin, and so forth. And the value of peace. We try to live it through cooperation with different international entities. So the last one was a Global Peace Offensive. It is an initiative that was signed in Maribor last year between European Academy of Sciences and Arts, World Academy of Art and Science, and Alma Mater, and was then given support by the Club of Rome. We also try to teach this to our graduates, and we see them as bridge builders, especially those in humanities and social sciences. So I hope I managed to fulfill sort of the direction that we were given, to combine the vision, the values, with also a short presentation of our institution, to see maybe what we can do together. Like, I try to write something, Alma Mater, a community, a bridge, a promise. The invitation is to join in pursuit of knowledge, cooperation, peace, as we do with iASK, with the prolongation of our cooperation, renewal of our agreement of cooperation, and the final question, if not us, who will pursue knowledge? If not us, who will build peace? So thank you very much.
Thank you, Luka, for this very interesting and very inspiring presentation. And now we shall also focus on the future, focus on education, because the next speaker will talk about the new design for doctoral research, combining community discourse with the use of large language models. Mr. László, Professor László Komlósi, please, I invite you. He is actually at the University of Széchenyi, a year head of the doctoral program there, and otherwise an expert of linguistic and communication. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you all here who have been working for iASK, but also for the city of Kőszeg. I'm very happy to be back, right, in Kőszeg as the Princeton of Hungary. we hope it will be Princeton of Hungary. I'm very happy to follow the ideas that Tamás and Luka have been presenting. One thing is that with Tamás we have some joint past, right? We have been working together, especially on the technology and science promotion, which is closely linked to the ideas of a government that can see the future. And there are different governments all over the world, of course, but there are very basic values that should be held, okay, by all these governments. As far as Luka is concerned, right, I know Professor Toplak for about 25, 30 years, and I may tell you, and you know, of course, very well, that last May, Professor Toplak and Alma Mater University representatives were accepted to the AARC Alps Adriatic Rectors Conference, and Professor Toplak was in Győr in person, right, and joined this network. So networks are open, okay, and it is also very important that we understand what it means. Now, if you have a scale that has two arms, okay, I would say that Tamás and Luka are on the enthusiastic and very, very encouraging positive side. Please don't misunderstand. My talk will be a little bit on the other arm of the scale, and I would raise some phenomena, okay, some developments in our social ecology, right? I mean, social environment that need to be understood, and we have to do something about these things. Also, my limitation is that I am running and heading a doctoral program in business administration, which I would term rather as a transdisciplinary doctoral program, international doctoral program. At the University of Győr, Széchenyi István University, we have at the moment 55 enrolled PhD students in that program. It means that we have to, of course, take care of the students. We have to have tutors and supervisors for everybody. And the point is that you will probably see here from my presentation, although I'm not promoting my or our program, I'm just mentioning it, that we do not assign topics, research topics to our candidates. They should be prepared to bring their own problems, real life problems, and we will help them elaborate and understand problems in their own complexities. Thank you very much. So that's something that I would like to talk about. Now, interestingly, for the sake of argument, I would like to reverse the sequence of the concepts that we are using on this conference. I would like to put cooperation first, then responsibility, and then creativity. Why? I would like to explain. I think cities and universities are public spaces which do or should facilitate cooperation, right? It would be very unwise and very difficult to live together, right, in these public spaces, or in fact, that would be the death of public spaces if there was no cooperation. But once you engage in cooperation with other people, I think inevitably you assume responsibility. You are responsible in that kind of, in a network of cooperation. And if you build social bonds and enjoy support from people in your social environment in which everyone assumes responsibility, then I think creativity gets a green light. So if you follow me, right, in that sense, I think cooperation is at the very beginning of this sequence, right? And then you build responsibility, and then we can hope for cooperation. Now, it all seems very logical, dynamic, also normative in some sense. In my presentation, however, I will point out difficulties that seem to disturb this ideal, harmonious, and somewhat idyllic collaboration among the stakeholders. When looking for information sources of some undesirable developments and negative phenomena, I decided to focus on research. I will not talk about other phenomena in the society. I will try to focus on research. And I will make reference to research findings in cultural anthropology, sociology, social psychology, social philosophy, and not least, research methodology. The purpose of my presentation is manifold. I would like to list a few of these purposes that I would like to realize here. A, it is to be emphasized that belonging to and becoming a member of a scientific community, especially for young prospective researchers, is vital. This presumption is held valid for both students of social sciences and natural sciences alike. The second claim is that the crisis of community in the digital age is to be topicalized. We have to talk about these things, which relates to members of specific contexts in research communities as well. Research communities are also affected by the crisis of community life or community building. The phenomena of solitude and loneliness, mostly created by digital platforms, engineered for engagement rather than connection, will be discussed in my presentation. C, I will touch upon the levels of community discourse as well, and also the role of consequences of the ubiquitous use of AI in research. Very, very important these days. I think everybody will agree that we have to come to terms with that kind of practices. And then I would like to turn to the central claim of my presentation, which concerns viable approaches to research. First of all, a transdisciplinary approach for finding solutions to complex problems involving a variety of disciplines. You may call them multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary. Okay, we like to call it transdisciplinary, never mind. And also, I would like to propose a context-specific combination of dialogical community discourse and the critical use of large language models, such as ChatGPT, Gemini, or Close. In my understanding, the possibility and the way of becoming a member of a scientific community is greatly influenced by the social environment, the local and global culture. I think the presentations before me have touched upon that, what it means local and global, and the nature of community, which sometimes we can call the social village. Appadurai, in his book Modernity at Large, Cultural Dimensions of Globalization, bases his arguments on transnational anthropology. And he distinguishes the landscape in global cultural economy. Cultural, that's here the key word. Please try to see why we start off from this concept, right? What it means to be locally cultural or globally cultural. Local means in Appadurai's formulation. He says, quote, "The forces of cultural gravity seemed always to pull away from the formation of large-scale ecumenes, whether religious, commercial, or political, towards smaller-scale accretions of intimacy and interest." So that puts an emphasis on the local, right? What drives or what helps to have local values and local connections. When Appadurai talks about global values, then he, very interestingly, of course it's terminology and a little bit of a play with language, he makes some new words based on landscape, right? Quite often we use the metaphor social landscape, okay, or technological landscape, and Appadurai uses these one: ethnoscapes, technoscapes, financescapes, mediascapes, and ideoscapes. I will not go through all these scapes, very interesting, of course. However, from our point of view, it's very important to understand that the ethnoscapes include the historically documented migration of different kinds of different peoples all over the world, right? Migration, not only in the 20th and also the 21st century, but it has always been. Not only migrations, but also ethnic groups, right? Minorities, for example. Luka was talking about the human rights, of course. Yes, human rights are about majority groups, but also minorities. The technoscapes, just think about the disruptive technologies that we have to face that changes our communication and our relational capabilities and skills. Financescapes, for example, the concentration of capital in the world, right? It's very important. Or the translocation of capital from one country to other, from one state to another. Then you have mediascapes, social media, and all the different kinds of influencing information sources. I think that's the most obvious or the most well known to all of us. But the ideoscapes are also very interesting, which are linked to governments, right? This is states, right? States that promote certain kinds of ideologies or certain kinds of set of ideas. So all these different scapes influence, right, the landscape, right? We would say the overall picture, right, about societies. Just a few words about the global village. Of course, when the idea of global village came about, it was a very positive attitude, right? It showed that, yes, social media will bring people together, right? It will be an open society, and people will be able to get closer to each other. I think it has been shown that the social media, it was overestimated, right, by this sort of positive idea, and the consequences of social media and different kinds of internet usage, right, came to be problematic, right? We have to, I think we see almost every day what different governments do about the use of internet in schools, right? We can see that now governments and organizations try to limit, right, the use of screen time, as we call it. Also, very interesting what Dunkelman's The Vanishing Neighbor, The Transformation of American Community, in his book writes about the middle level, right? He talks about the social village, and the social village, which is decreasing, right, in its influence, is the middle ring, which consists of familiar but not intimate relationships with the people who live around us. Okay, these are your neighbors, the people in your town, right? Everybody that you can have some contact with. And fortunately, of course, it is true that you can build a closer relationship to your close family, right? We can use these information technologies, and we know a little bit more about the whereabouts of our family members, at least, okay? And also we get a lot of news, but somehow this social village has been suffering, right, from its basic values, right, and existence. I like the expressions that come to use as a home-based or phone-based culture, right? It is really, the consequence of that is the missing middle ring, okay? But also the increasing screen time for human beings. We spend more and more time in front of the screen, right? And what we have, solitude and loneliness. It's also very interesting to talk about why people, why a majority of people choose loneliness, right? To be lonely or to be on their own, right? Now, solitude is very interesting because solitude might mean that you sort of isolate yourself from the environment. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are lonely, right? Because you are engaged in certain things, as we know now, okay? But you certainly choose solitude for yourself. It's very interesting. The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt is the division of the notion of leisure into two categories. Engaged leisure includes socializing, going to concerts, playing sports, meeting other people. But there is a sedentary leisure in his categorization, which includes watching TV, playing video games, aimlessly surfing on the internet, and so on and so forth. So again, right, we have to be careful. We have to be careful how we treat all these phenomena and what we can see about that. I would like to say a few words about transdisciplinarity, because I believe that we have very many complex social problems which cannot be solved by one specific discipline alone. And also, I would suggest and I would propose to consider a new approach to research communities, namely the context-specific combination of dialogical community discourse and, of course, the critical use of AI, for example, the large language models, and so on and so forth. Transdisciplinarity is basically, okay, thank you very much. I think from here you can see that transdisciplinarity should mean something like beyond disciplines, but of course taking the most important on the lower right-hand side, okay, taking the most important findings, right, and information from relevant disciplines, but not going deep into that discipline. You don't have to be an expert in certain disciplines. Okay, that's transdisciplinary. Now, of course, we have to face the ubiquitous use of AI in research, and that's not a problem. Okay, what I would like to say now is that we cannot turn our back on these developments. My background is linguistics, and of course I do follow quite often what Noam Chomsky talks about, for example, artificial intelligence. And I was surprised the other day, actually yesterday, I just wanted to check it out. Noam Chomsky said that artificial intelligence doesn't say anything for human intelligence and research. I was surprised, right, that he's so distant, right, from this. Okay, what we can see is that, of course, these artificial intelligence supported methods can be very predictive, right? They have a predictive power, and they help us with quite often with syntax, with semantics, and the ontologies inherent in human language corpora. They are based on corpora, as we know that, okay? So it depends what kind of texts are based as the basis of these systems. However, we also find that these systems inherit inaccuracies and biases presented in the data they are trained in. So here, I think critical thinking or critical attitude is important, okay, when we deal with these things. So the viable proposition of this presentation, but also as a philosophy of our working in the doctoral program, is real-life discussion groups. Not chat boxes, right? Not online meetings, but as much as possible, real-life discussion groups. Real-life discussion groups adopt a practice which combine the critical use of large language models, ChatGPT, for example, with context-specific dialogical community discourse. That is, problem-solving discussion groups among doctoral students, supervisors, and faculty members. That's a very narrow, I would say, a relatively narrow part of higher education, but it's doctoral training, it's doctoral education, it's doctoral research, and we have to keep up with the changes and challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Komlósi. And now our next speaker, whoever comes to our events, conferences at iASK on a regular basis, I probably don't need to introduce him. However, I would still like to introduce Sean. Are you there? So Sean Cleary.
I am indeed.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Sean Cleary is the chairman of Strategic Concepts Ltd, managing director of the Center for Advanced Governance, founder and executive vice chair of the FutureWorld Foundation, chairman of Atlantic Holdings, and he also serves on the International Advisory Board of iASK. So if anybody is credible to talk about our future world, is probably Sean. So Sean, I would like to give you the floor, and you have about 20 minutes. I would like to ask you to give your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Béla. I shall try to do my best in the time that we have available. I think the introductions have been absolutely outstanding. I think what's rather splendid in respect of the whole has been the fact that we were able to explore all dimensions of the challenge in quite a remarkable way. We managed to look at issues of cooperation, of collaboration, of responsibility, and related to all of those, of peace at the same time. And I'm going to try and build on that from a very practical perspective in order to set up the discussion about the future of universities. So our challenge is that we're at a truly remarkable time. You all recognize Vladimir Ilyich Lenin on the right-hand side of this slide, I'm sure, and this remarkably cliched but terribly important observation that there are decades when nothing happens and weeks when decades happen. Well, perhaps it hasn't been weeks, but certainly in the 8 months since Donald Trump began his 47th presidency in the United States, we have seen something like decades happen remarkably swiftly, disentangling and undoing a huge amount of what we'd taken for granted for quite some time. And to understand what he's undone it's perhaps worthwhile going back to something that Hedley Bull said in 1977 about what a global society actually is. Bull argues that it consists of a group of states conscious of common interests and common values that conceive themselves to be bound by a common set of rules in their relations to one another. And of course, what that really boils down to is a collective understanding both at the level of the nation state and at the level of the international community, that we collectively strive to try to achieve three outcomes: an appropriate level of human security, an appropriate level of equity or fairness, if you choose, that allows each to advance according to his capabilities and to create circumstances in which advancement is feasible. And then sustainability, which we can think of in a certain sense as intergenerational equity, allowing us to absorb what we need from the present era without destroying the prospects of those who follow from us. All of that is premised on a very simple proposition that the purpose of all of our economies and policies is to advance the welfare of those who live in our societies. It's 80 years since the United Nations was created in San Francisco in the aftermath of the conference at Bretton Woods a year earlier in 1944 that gave us, among other things, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank Group. But the truth is, these international systems are not functioning in any meaningful way today to be able to address the challenges that we require. Hence, cooperation and collaboration, and associated with that peace, are in remarkably short supply, in part due to our abandonment of any sense of collective responsibility. Now, this goes back to a certain period. It goes back to the period of the wall coming down in Germany in 1989 and the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. Frank Fukuyama wrote two remarkable articles, one article in one book in reality in that period. In National Interest in 1989, he said, what we may be witnessing is not just the end of the Cold War or the passing of a particular period of post-war history, but the end of history as such, that is the end point of mankind's ideological evolution and the universalization of Western liberal democracy as the final form of human government. He took that one step further when he wrote the book in 1992, The End of History and the Last Man, where he argued that the ascendancy of liberal models, of Western models of liberal democracy and free markets, represented in Hegelian terms the end point of humanity's socio-cultural evolution. And of course, that has proved to be grotesquely untrue. Derrida at the time criticized the book as a celebration of the economic and cultural hegemony of Western liberalism. And those of you who were in Munich in 2007 would have heard Vladimir Ilyich Putin argue exactly the same point at that stage. This broke for a variety of different reasons. The tensions between a highly integrated global economy, underpinned by digitalized financial markets and supply chains, was in stark contrast to the level of cultural fracture and economic division and normative diversity present across the whole of humanity. And as a result, the polity, preeminently the United Nations, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and World Trade Organization, was completely incapable of bridging the gap between a highly integrated economy and a hugely fractured global society. That took us to a point around about the time of COVID, where there were 8 clear factors which were clearly signaling a new inflection point in respect of the global landscape. Details don't matter, they're all on the slides, you can look at them afterwards. But functionally, we had a shifting center of economic gravity, an inability and disinterest on the part of the United States in power projection on the same level as before, a disruption of the rules-based international order, tensions across many of the regional security landscapes, the first biodigital technological revolution, large-scale social disruption, weakening national government, and a tremendous amount of environmental impacts across the world, causing significant levels of disruption. And that's given us where we are today, a period of divisive multipolarity, characterized chiefly by a fracturing of the rules-based international order, which has brought about normative fracture on a scale that even goes to peremptory rules of international law, including jus cogens, at a time when the post-industrial biodigital revolution, combining infotech, biotech, nanotech, and neurotech on conflating scales at remarkable speed, is producing the sort of social, economic, and political consequences traditionally associated with large-scale technological revolution. This is being underpinned and exacerbated by a resurgence of nationalist populism and the abandonment of any understanding of the need for collective action, primitive mercantilism, characterized briefly by protectionism through tariffs and efforts at reshoring industry, associated with surging military spending in the context of the exacerbation of the threat landscape and demands for ever greater military expenditure. That happens to be Bakhmut, but it could be any part of Gaza today. And the overall circumstance in both of these has been utterly horrendous in respect of the impact on civilian populations and civilian infrastructure. On top of that, as Tom Fletcher in this particular picture has pointed out, we now have, in the context of Gaza, something that is authentically a famine, and many of you will have seen that the United Nations Special Council, within the framework of the Commission on Human Rights, has now declared a genocide taking place in Gaza. Associated with that, we've seen extraordinary breaches of international law in the context of the strikes both by the Israelis and the United States in Iran. And this has exacerbated a crisis in the Gulf where the IDF overreach, backed by the United States, has led to both the People's Republic of China and the Organization of the Islamic Conference foreign ministers condemning the aggression that has taken place. This is translating into an increasing range of tension. 142 states voted in favor of a resolution in the General Assembly just at the end of the week, which condemned Hamas, but also argued for the creation of a two-state solution at scale, which conference began today under the leadership of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. At the same time, at this most significant historical inflection point since the fall of the Berlin Wall, we are seeing a surge in global military expenditure, where in 2023, we'd already seen a surge up to 2.4 trillion. In 2024, we saw another 300 billion up to 2.7 billion, which is the highest global total ever recorded and constitutes the 10th year of consecutive increases. Leaving the obvious implications of that aside, this is also causing an extraordinary surge in emissions because military applications tend to be extremely fossil fuel intensive. If you relate that back to what we have been observing in respect of the surge of emissions over the course of the past decade, and more extensively, essentially since 1965, then it's not surprising that we're seeing a surge of extreme weather conditions in almost every part of the world. In fact, it's not only climate, it's all of the planetary boundaries, 6 of the 9 of which have already been breached under present circumstances. So we are set on an extremely dangerous track, and the underlying truth behind all of this is unless we find ways of restoring an understanding of the need for collective action, these problems will become completely unsustainable. In simple terms, this is also related to crises in terms of the overall global economy associated preeminently with inequalities. Although the G20 and the UN Pact for the Future last year are focused on restructuring of the global financial architecture to enable financing for development and a just energy transition, the truth is that we're nowhere like that. We're seeing a surge in the concentration of wealth in an ever smaller group of people, and we are seeing circumstances where many developing countries are now in a debt-driven development crisis. External debt is at 99% of the export earnings of the developing countries. Many are therefore defaulting not on their debts, they're meeting their debt service obligations, but on development. Debt service costs have now produced a circumstance where not very much short of half of the people on earth live in countries that spend more on debt payments than on health or education. On top of that, we now have a 4 trillion annual financing gap to reach the targets set out in the SDGs. I've already mentioned that we're on the cusp of the most extensive technological transformation since the Industrial Revolution. This is both creating phenomenal opportunities and disrupting social structures, business models, warfare, and the workings of states. There are phenomenal breakthroughs occurring at the disciplinary frontiers, where large language models and generative AI are interfacing with biotech breakthroughs and some in neurotech, which are producing outcomes which were completely unimaginable a decade ago. But on the other hand, we have a significant number of doomsayers, if you will, who are concerned that the technology will create massive unemployment while sending profits soaring. And certainly, if you look at the increasing levels of financial inequality in the world today, it seems that that is utterly plausible. So that means we have to find ways to be able to get a regulatory framework for these breakthrough technologies in place as quickly as possible, focused essentially on monitoring, reporting, verification, and enforcement, premised on agreement of the highest possible level of agreement on technological and normative standards. We have to be able to prevent where possible and mitigate in all cases the scale of social disruption and individual and community harm, while we enable constructive evolution and of the capabilities and applications of these algorithmic systems. Those of you who are old enough will recognize that there is a parallel in this in terms of Articles 1 and 2 of the original Atomic Energy Agency Act, which set exactly the same objectives in respect of atomic energy in the 1950s. These technologies are moving vastly faster than nuclear technology was capable of moving, and therefore there is no exact simulacrum here, but the underlying principles are applicable. The difficulty is that the instruments that we've used in the past to be able to deal with these sorts of challenges are also weakening. That graph in the top portion of this slide shows that essentially from 2015, we've seen a progressive decline in the incidence and the expression of democracy on state level across the world. The last EIU Democracy Index in 2024 indicates that only 25 countries are now full democracies, whereas 60 in the world today are authoritarian regimes. And of course, tariffs are exacerbating this particular challenge because they are putting those states that are associated with the application of tariffs under a tremendous amount of additional stress. One of the consequences of this is probably a 20% reduction in global official development assistance. And ironically, although this is being done under the rubric of making America great again, it is producing a circumstance which China is exploiting to its enormous advantage. China indicated in the immediate aftermath of the application of tariffs to African countries that China would provide 100% zero tariff treatment to all 53 African countries that had diplomatic relations with China. For the least developed countries, in addition to zero tariff entry, China said it would roll out measures on market access, inspection and quarantine and customs clearance to boost trade in goods, enhance skills and technical training, and expand the promotion of quality products. If we look at the overall situation, then the World Bank has indicated that we are going to see 0.05%, or 0.5%, I'm sorry, cut off global GDP growth in the course of this year, and that we are likely to see, for the balance of the decade, the weakest performance in 17 years. Global GDP growth by 2027 is expected to average just 2.5%, the slowest pace of any decade since the 1960s. The long and the short of it is the global economy is at an inflection point. The forces that drove economic convergence and lifted billions out of poverty over 3 decades are now in retreat. The poorest countries will suffer the most. Developing economies will be worse off, with GDP levels 6% lower. Except for China, according to the World Bank, it could take these economies 2 decades to recoup the economic losses of the 2020s, and they argue for rebuilding trade relations, restoring fiscal order, and accelerating job creation, taking us back to the principles of cooperation and collaboration that earlier speakers addressed today. Unfortunately, that is not the geopolitical reality of the present. This is translating in very perverse ways in different places. The Japan Times this week ran a rather splendid headline: airstrikes, drones, and tariffs. Being a friend of the US is not what it used to be. And that, of course, translated into what we saw at the Tianjin summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization at the end of August and the first 2 days of September, where, ironically, Mr. Modi was pictured between Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi, indicating that what Mr. Trump is doing is bringing together persons who, for the past 40 years, have actually been at loggerheads with one another. Now, China's role is highly significant in this regard because the period of revolution that we think of as the first industrial revolution, that was roughly 1740 to roughly 1840, actually brought about a fundamental shift in outcomes in respect of economic production. Asia had in fact been the dominant element in global economic activity until approximately 1850 to 1860. The Industrial Revolution, which was effectively only the spinning jenny and the steam engine, if one thinks about it, brought about a fundamental transformation in that regard and allowed Western Europe to in fact surge to the fore. Everything that has happened since then, however, as a consequence of the transformations brought about in the 1980s, 90s, and 2000s to date, is being exacerbated by what is occurring at present. And China, India, and possibly related states in Asia are in the process of crafting what seems entirely plausibly to be the Asian century. So I'm going to close with two simple observations. China has just announced a global governance initiative built off the back of something that it presented to the Summit of the Future last year. And it is built on sovereign equality, the international rule of law, multilateralism, a people-centered approach focused on the delivery of real results. The challenge of that, if one is sitting in a Western environment today, is that every single one of those propositions sounds immensely attractive and are in fact the sort of propositions that one would have expected from those who crafted the United Nations and the Bretton Woods institutions and the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade in the aftermath of the Second World War. Those, however, are not the principles that are being applied by Western states under present circumstances, and China is filling the gap in a fairly remarkable way. One of the challenges, and that's something that iASK and others in the vicinity are in a position to be able to capitalize on that profoundly, is that we're seeing a massive shift of persons of extraordinary academic and research-based excellence out of the United States under present circumstances, preeminently to Europe, but also in terms of the Asian communities that had achieved academic excellence in the United States over the course of the past 2.5 decades, to India and China as well. So I'll close with the strategic foresight reports that the President of the European Commission has just released, arguing for the following areas of action in respect of Europe: developing a coherent global vision for the European Union, amplifying internal and external security, harnessing the power of technology and research, strengthening long-term economic resilience, supporting sustainable and inclusive well-being, reimagining education to couple economic reform with future-oriented labor market and social policies, strengthening democracy as a common good, and strengthening intergenerational fairness. If you think back to that original triangle that I offered you in the third slide, you'll find that those principles of human security, equity, and sustainability are spread right across these items. We can't do this without investing remarkably in integrative, deep, well-focused research across disciplinary boundaries in order to meet human needs. And this may be Europe's moment for precisely that purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. That was the same inspiring and frightening and exciting and so provoking. And now we arrived to the final phase of the afternoon session before the concert, and I invite to talk about the future university Professor Miszlivetz, who is already at the table, Professor Jody Jensen. She created a very important international study course and directed it for several years. And in the Kőszeg, please, Szabolcs Márka joined the panel from Columbia University and also as an iASK fellow, and Rozita Dimova. Okay, Rozita is also there, who is from the Cyril and Methodius University from Skopje. Szabolcs, we are looking for him. Okay, so the floor is yours.
Well, we'll wait for him. He'll come back.
Okay, all right. Yes, just for some people who are too young to know that, we have been discussing in the last, I would say, 5 to 8 or so years, this issue here in Kőszeg in summer and winter universities, and the question of the future university of the future. That came from a research. Jody and myself were participating in 2008 for IBM, and the research result was they asked us to produce something which can be seen as a product in case of the tax office is going to investigate about the money they gave us. The problem was the culture of Hungarian workforce at that time. That was exactly the year of the global crisis, the outbreak of the global financial and economic crisis. And they were interested in the research results, but also the suggestions. What is the suggestion of the researchers? And our suggestion was a completely new structure, a new concept of higher education. I don't go into details. This is a short essay I summarized 15 years ago. Basically, it's about the responsibility of our institutions called universities or research institutes for their product. To be responsible for the teachers, for the pedagogues in the kindergarten, etc. Not just give them a diploma, but to create a more integrated system, a flexible system which is very different of the old Humboldt model, huge, bigger and bigger universities with more and more tens and hundreds of thousands of students. And that we started to elaborate, and I don't go into details, of course, but our friend and colleague, Rozita Dimova, when she was here with us, she picked up this idea, suggesting that we should put together a book, and she's ready to edit it. So we would like to ask Rozita to tell about the trajectory quickly about the book, which is going to come out from Palgrave Macmillan very soon. There was a significant delay, forget about it now, and we hope that the book will be in our hands in a couple of weeks, and then we can organize book launches, etc. Rozita, the word is yours, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ferenc. Can you hear me well? Is it clear? Yeah?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks, Ferenc. You kind of pinpointed the main dilemma, or let's say conundrum of our volume. Basically, when I was given a selection of random papers presented at different summer or winter universities on the topic of future university, I was wondering now how to put them together in a coherent kind of volume that would make sense, that would argue something tangible, logical. And so then after the conversation with Ferenc, we had recurring conversations on what to do, how it started. It kind of came together, and this IBM research conducted in 2006 by IASK at the Institute for Social and European Studies at that time, Jody was also part of that research, was basically that study to identify what Hungary needs in its labor market to be competitive on a larger world scale. And basically, the conclusion Ferenc summarized that it requires a complete change, reform of the educational system, because the way it was, inherited by socialism, with these very kind of deep-rooted, let's say, conservative, non-flexible ways of educating students, won't work. And so then another interesting and very important aspect for the volume for me as an editor was this series of interviews that Ferenc conducted with Emanuel Wallerstein, where this issue of the future university raised and featured prominently. And in the volume, I kind of addressed these moments in the 4 interviews conducted in a period of 40 years, actually, quite a long time span. But here, Wallerstein gives his own view, opinion of what or how he sees that future university. He argues that, which is an insight that I also found now being back in Skopje at my hometown, my homeland for very long. I've been away for 28 years, and now for the first time, I'm academically involved in North Macedonia. Wallerstein mentions that the major problem and one of the main factors for the resistance of universities to change and to reform is the stubbornness of the teaching and research staff. And his solution to this is that professors, they should be appointed in at least two or several other departments, so they do not form these kind of fortresses within one department. They need to be in different places, to be challenged by different colleagues, and this would in a way, decentralize or would democratize this absolute power of the professor, which is a topic that has been addressed by many. Pierre Bourdieu wrote Homo Academicus. I mean, this has been an issue, how to deal with let's say, I would use it in quotation marks, mentality of teaching staff who is resistant to change and to reforming the educational system. And so somehow all these issues, brought together this, as I said, ultimate or essential conflict that is at the basis, it's the core of our volume. How do we envision a future university where, for which we acknowledge universities are knowledge guardians that have practiced and transmitted scientific, philosophical, and cultural knowledge across generations. They are engines of social mobility and equity, and especially in the post-World War period, welfare states and even the socialist regimes were involved in expanding access to education and to working class and rural population. But we've faced, and especially in recent decades, this kind of a global tendency of neoliberalization of educational system of universities, where this vocational professionalism becomes the main kind of focus, disregarding or dismissing, suspending the importance of, producing a complete intellectual, citizen who would be critical, who would be intellectually able to discern different critical issues. So the conflict or this tension between being ready for the labor market and being equipped with skills that will, enable us to find jobs, to be competitive, to be attractive for companies like IBM, like these global employers. But then on the other hand, to also maintain the importance and strength of, what university should be all about, discovering a universe to us, to the students. And somehow seems that this kind of, market logic that burdens universities with ranking, competition, metrics-based, results has kind of taken over and has been dominating, because if you're not ranked in the Shanghai list, St. Cyril and Methodius University in Skopje is not even among the first 2,000. And so we were gathered by the rector, some of us international who came back from abroad, to really devise strategies how to, increase and improve the ranking of the university. So the obsession with ranking just becomes the primary priority, regardless what else is happening in the curriculum, in the disciplinary division. So basically, for me, when we discuss how to put the chapters together and how to kind of proceed with the volume, stressing let's say, the impasses and the deadlocks of this neoliberalization of university and education, but also then acknowledging that there is some value from the socialist remnants and the socialist legacy that exists, in Central and Eastern Europe, that maybe deserves to be reinvented and reapplied, and that has value, needs to be discussed. So basically, the volume is, we have 14 contributors who come from different perspectives. The volume is centered on Central and Eastern Europe. We have several examples from Southeast Europe, from the Balkans. But basically, the point is that, yes, reform and change is absolutely necessary. But there are some attempts and, kind of new innovations, possibilities that give hope for education that will be competitive and will enable people, students, to be ready for the labor market, but at the same time will enable people to also achieve this intellectual kind of, vision and progress.
Rozita, my suggestion would be, and then we come back to you, so with that, let people react.
So maybe I'll stop here. I'll just mention that in Ferenc and Jody's essays, the stress is on the necessity to reform social sciences. Actually, the social sciences are, and especially the socialist, not only the socialist legacy, but even prior to it, the Enlightenment legacy that kind of made this division between natural and social sciences. This gap is actually the main reason or factor that has been, causing problems in how social sciences rank in the kind of scientific field. And also Jody's essay on the chaotic and mess that has been created in the field of social sciences is something that maybe Jody
there will be a book launch.
So thank you for now.
No. We organize a real book launch very soon, and then we go into details.
Okay.
But now I forgot to mention. I should have mentioned that what Sean, it's very echoing. What Sean Cleary was talking about. That was conceptualized in his original essay that we understood in 2009 or 2010, that it's not just that small centers like iASK and somewhat bigger universities like Maribor should cooperate or Dures or other places in Eastern Central Europe in a more frequent and regular way, but we need to conceptualize those big problems. Sean mentioned 15 years ago it was not so dramatic, not so tragic, but it was foreseeable that the problems of water, of pandemics, and of climate change, etc., should be understood more in their complexities and in their interrelatedness. That was the core suggestion. And therefore, not only social sciences, but social sciences and natural sciences and technical sciences should think together, cooperate. We didn't know what it means exactly, inter-trans and multidisciplinarity, but that was the idea, to talk about problems. And this is why we invited people from the terrain of water. We have Udine Resilience's project, etc., etc. I don't go into details, but let's come back to your introductions. Thank you very much, and then I would give the word to Jody.
Thank you. Rozita wrote a wonderful introduction to the book, so I will bring your attention to that. I also just wanted to bring up an anecdote with the publication. I mean, it's always with all publications with several authors like herding cats, and it was really hard for Rozita to get everybody together on the same page. But one of the real problems we had was with Palgrave and the cover picture. And this, I think, is like a quintessential metaphor for the whole content of the book. I mean, Palgrave only gave us certain things, certain covers we could pick. And all of the covers showed no people in them. So we're talking about the future of the university, and they were all kind of AI-produced covers of instruments, of computers, of empty libraries, not in color, with no people in them. And I mean, we hired someone who produced a wonderful cover for the book, but they wouldn't allow us to use that. So we had to go with the least worst cover. I mean, as part of their series, we could only choose, one, but at least it has a library in it. Again, no people, but it has colorful books in it and not just like computer programs in it. So anyway, it was just a perfect metaphor for what we were dealing with. What I wanted to do today was just to present 2 chapters of the book in a very short way. The first is Jim Skelly's, because, you know, my dear friend died before this publication could come out, but we included a chapter of his. He spent over 50 years teaching. And so he had a great experience with students and with how to be an effective teacher. And so he wrote this, actually, I think probably 10 years ago, but it was still valuable. So I just want to describe it a little bit. So Jim's chapter explores the challenges facing higher education in the context of rapid technological advancements and overwhelming influx of information. He critiques the traditional education system, which often prioritizes superficial knowledge acquisition and employability over critical thinking, deep reading, and intellectual engagement. So he draws on historical and contemporary perspectives and highlights the transformative impact of the Gutenberg Revolution and the current information tsunami, which has fragmented attention spans and diminished the capacity for sustained reflection. He also emphasizes the need for educational reform, advocating pedagogical models that foster critical thinking, dialogue, and disconnection from information technologies. A lot of this overlaps with what Professor Komlósi said and what Luka also mentioned. The chapter details the structure and outcomes of his critical thinking seminars. He held critical thinking seminars in Kőszeg for, I don't know, between 5 and 7 years for an international group of students. They had to give up their online, communications for an entire week. And they would sit on the main square in Kőszeg and read books. Books. So no tablets, no computers, nothing. And then they would get together and they would discuss it. Those had really, really revolutionary impact on the students that were involved because they were extremely intimate, and they were extremely impactful. So he is talking about kind of some of the outcomes of the critical thinking seminars. Some of the students who were here at those critical thinking seminars, I told about this book. So when the book comes out, they will come and discuss it. They emphasize deep reading, communal learning, and intellectual freedom. Student and faculty feedback underscored the seminar's success in cultivating critical analysis and meaningful engagement, contrasting sharply with the limitations of traditional education. So Jim concludes by calling for innovative approaches, particularly in smaller institutions like we have here, to create educational environments that prioritize depth and the development of independent thought. So that will be Jim's chapter. So if we come to mine, I take this really broad view like Sean does, and I try to get at the deeper structures, but I'm really happy that a lot of it also addresses what Luka and Professor Komlósi already mentioned today, so it's not kind of way out there. So I write about, that global crises today are manifestations of a deeper civilizational transformation rather than isolated disruptions. So drawing on the insight, I have 5 favorite scholars that I have used for pretty much decades. Karl Jaspers, Thomas Kuhn, Emanuel Wallerstein, Karl Polanyi, and Michael Schacker. And their analysis highlights the exhaustion of existing epistemological, political, and economic frameworks. So all of these scholars kind of converge on the view that history advances through transformative ruptures, breaks, when prevailing paradigms of meaning and organization collapse and they demand reconfiguration. And I think this is we're at the breaking point now. So the reduction of crises to national frameworks and disciplinary silos has produced an epistemic provincialism that reinforces fragmentation, irresponsibility, and the erosion of democratic legitimacy. So the scientific method today reveals that when systemic anomalies are recognized as errors, and this occurs in a lot of the natural sciences, as well as the social sciences. So let me repeat that again. The scientific method today reveals that when systemic anomalies are recognized as errors rather than evidence, that academia remains blind to the very deviations that could verify new outcomes. So within this dynamic, universities play a crucial role while they often reproduce disciplinary divisions and nation-centered assumptions. They also represent one of the few institutions capable of advancing integrative knowledge, interdisciplinary dialogue, and planetary consciousness. And their transformation is indispensable if humanity is to navigate the civilizational threshold toward a sustainable future. And I'll just conclude here with a quote from Emanuel Wallerstein. He's talking about the social sciences, but it can apply to the natural sciences as well. He said, "Indeed, all sciences need to embrace uncertainty, because uncertainty is wondrous. And if certainty were to be real, it would be moral death. If we were certain of the future, there would be no moral compulsion to do anything. If everything is uncertain, then the future is open to creativity, not merely human creativity, but the creativity of all nature." So that's my overview.
Yes, and now just a short comment before I give the word to Sabi. We asked Professor Márka to contribute to the book, but it was very short time notification. So he promised that he's going to read the book and he's going to make comments. And well, you are very welcome. And I think this is just a modest initiative. This first book. We should more serious volumes should come very soon.
Okay, I'm poked. So it is always a pleasure to come here because Jody's and Ferry's vision created a fantastic community in a fantastic town. So it's an intellectual pleasure. So I would like to say a few words on the writing on the wall. Yeah. So when I was a little kid, my first teacher insisted that I cannot use pencil or ballpoint pen. I had to use a fountain pen because obviously my handwriting that is necessary for future success would be much better with a fountain pen. Writing was on the wall. That it's not true, although my writing is horrible, but the AI can read it. So the writing was on the wall when later in school my math teacher insisted that mathematics means that I don't use calculator. And indeed, I don't do many additions in my head, but I can do theorems and proofs. So the writing was on the wall that we will have computers. Today, the writing is on the wall on two ways. One, education will be student-driven. Two, AI is here, like calculator or the ballpoint pen. Yeah? So we can resist or deal with it. Yeah? So we had a very nice editorial about the intersection of these two writings on the wall in South China Morning Post. It's nice because it's read actively by 3-4 Hungaries daily. So the point is that AI, like any other child, will be a student. Either we educate it or not. We have to be careful because when somebody doesn't have a purpose, oh, that person will get a purpose. Yeah, but maybe we don't want that purpose. So we better give a purpose to everybody who seeks purpose. And that's a very important point. Two, student-driven education means that the students will find who teaches them what they want to learn, and children are the most disrespectful to established powers. So they will not necessarily find the education what we give them today as the most inviting in the age of AI when they can learn. So we can either say that we don't allow that, That's not the future, but maybe then everybody will be a flat earther, because that's what AI will teach them, because that might become the majority viewpoint. So what is very important is that we read the writing on the wall and we accept that no students and youth will have a say what is the future university. They will want to learn what they want to learn, not what we want to teach them. And they can do that with the AI. So we either think ahead, or we will learn the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, lovely. Thank you, Szabolcs. We forgot to mention that the entire title of the book is The Future University in Central and Eastern Europe, Building and Dismantling the Ivory Pyramid. And so here I just want to remind Szabolcs and all of our colleagues that we were discussing this. What should we constructing? What kind of new higher educational and research unit? Which reminds us on, it was jokingly mentioned, Princeton, a new ivory tower, or something different. My conception very clearly was we have to jump out of that box of ivory tower. But at the same time, we need to keep academic excellence. So how to do that? My question is to everyone. How to do it in East and Central Europe? Our not so humble assumption was that something has to happen here. Jody and myself repeated this sentence, this commonplace, probably several hundreds of thousands of times in this room here, that innovation, the real social, institutional, political innovations are coming from peripheries. Okay? That sounds like a big commonplace. But maybe it's true. Maybe this part of the world, which was, Slovenia, Hungary, Baltic, and the Balkans, really suffering quite a bit from east and west and north, south, all kinds of invasions, etc. But we still kept in a kind of very, very complex way, curious way, our identities. And that means that there is some kind, especially Kőszeg is a very good example for that. It's a secret why Kőszeg survived for 900 years now. And other cities could not do the same. Somebody lost 2-3 times its identity. It was Savaria, it was a Roman capital, a provincial capital, Pannonia. And then after the Second World War, all the Jews were killed. Almost nobody came back. They lost this very vibrant, dynamic middle town capacity. So there are secrets, but something is in this commonplace. I think through that innovation and a real breakthrough might come or should come from peripheries. So why are we here? Why are we talking about Eastern Central Europe and the new university model coming from Eastern, maybe Skopje? Maybe Tirana, maybe we all together. That's a question. So I would like to invite you to come to the debate, including Sean and Professor Komlósi and Lira and all the others. So what do you think? Are we capable? Is it possible to realize iASK's vision, to create a network university? Wallerstein mentions this many times, that universities are downgraded. Universities are more or less playing the role of secondary schools. That means that doctoral schools and postdoctoral study centers like iASK, advanced studies, should play the role of what universities did 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 years ago. So these are questions we do not have very solid final answers. But I'm asking you and giving back the word to Rozita, maybe short couple of sentences, sharp, provocative answers. Rozita.
Well, I think in the volume we have 2 contributions from Hungary. The István Bibó College of Law to me, that essay is one of my favorites because it's so illustrative that things can really work. Because these, the authors, Marty and Aaron, I cannot pronounce their full names, but the two co-authors argue that the István Bibó College manages to harvest young talents and brilliant students without demanding extra tuition or high kind of fees, and that there is a possibility to identify and to support young, talented, gifted students and enable them to go through a good educational process, not necessarily elitizing or bring, kind of stressing the elite or the prestige of the institution in a financial way. So to me, the István Bibó College is really an example of a successful model, how to enable students good education and still, keep the excellence without monetarization and funding that, the elite universities require. And then the second essay is in the introduction, we have a section on the Synergy campus. Actually, it started with the Synergy campus. When I wrote the proposal to Palgrave, I mentioned this and I said, here, we have this model, or we have this kind of vision of a university that integrates different aspects, garden, performance spaces, arts, drone landing kind of field. So I said that maybe we can, kind of bring this future university models through actual or, already envisioned forms. And Palgrave said, yes, please write more about this. So I think, and István Bibó, the college is already working and it's already active. So basically, I think, yes, Hungary does, despite the, clumsy, rigid system with the post-socialist burdens, it does have flexibility and offers some ways how to improve things.
Thank you. I would like to ask others. I mean, we had this debate about Princeton, about the creating useless knowledge. Yeah, that's not. And craft is in a little bit the opposite. We decided to introduce craft as an idea of implementing knowledge, to find out what our neighborhood needs, what our social context is about, not just thinking. So both have valid arguments. What do you think now, Sabi? Did we convince you, or you still want that very elite ivory tower?
Different strokes for different people. So the useless knowledge is only useful if it's implemented. Yeah, it's not always the same people who create useless knowledge and who implement them, but you have to implement it. So question is whether the people and the environments where implementation can happen are the same environments where useless knowledge can be created. So for example, there is this future university concept, and it was not explicitly created to serve student-driven education, but the fact that it has component where a student is not bound to a certain university but can take courses from anywhere on earth, or even can create their own course and definitely their own specialization, that opens up a new practical way to create new things. So it is sometimes implementing useless knowledge is actually the best way to create useless knowledge, because surprises happen. Yeah.
Who's
so.
Financing it? Sorry. Who's going to finance to create useless knowledge?
There are various ways. Usually it's self-financed, yeah, and accidentally financed, or mistakenly financed. Yeah. So because as so these are the three ways to finance useless knowledge. And as Tamás said, knowledge is usually financed through answering the three questions: why, what, and how. These are exactly the questions real science cannot answer, because the moment they are answered, it's not real science. So there is a paradox here. Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not totally convinced that the writing's on the wall here. My impression is that we don't understand the fragility of those technical systems that we have produced. I mean, we see it pretty much every day, how things get knocked out, and you know, airports, defense systems, telecommunications. I mean, so to depend on AI to help us to escape from our loneliness, our isolation, I am absolutely not convinced. It's just reinforcing the same mechanistic worldview that has been going on, you know, for centuries here. We need a more holistic view of what education implies. It means self-knowledge. It's just not knowledge about things. It's about knowledge of yourself and the meaning of life and your purpose on this planet. So I find this technological approach to future education quite limiting. And just to address something else that Sabi brought out, I was just remember, Jim Skelly started a course, a global course. It was called the Global Conversation. And we all taught in this global conversation. We had students from both China and Juniata College in the United States, and I think from Dublin. And this was an online course, but this was early on before we had, you know, online degrees and all of that. And it was really very successful. It was absolutely interesting to get, you know, Chinese views with Juniata College students and with, you know, students from Dublin. So that's an old model. I mean, that's not so hard to set up, but I'm saying that is not going to answer our existential questions about what we're doing here and how we want our civilization to move forward, especially not in what I call a chaotic age. You know, an age that combines both chaos and order, and we are in the middle of it now. So the standard operating procedure is not going to function anymore. It'll be changed.